Hi everyone, my name's Lauren and I'm a student counsellor at the City of Glasgow College. This is my colleague Gillian and she's a student advisor at the City of Glasgow College, and today we're going to be talking to you about financial worries and financial difficulties. So I don't know about you, Gillian, but financial kind of chats and financial conversations aren't something that fills me with excitement around budgeting. I don't think it fills most people with excitement.
No, definitely not.
But I think it's actually a really, really good skill, and you know, sometimes you don't realise you need it until you're kind of in financial difficulty.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Lauren. And I think it's really good to highlight that, like, managing your money is a skill.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that you do need to learn. It's not something that's kind of already programmed into us.
Yeah, and I don't really think it's discussed enough, you know, like in school, that kind of like, it's a life skill for sure, of being able to budget, being able to manage your money. And it's not something that comes naturally, and I think a lot of people do struggle with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you said, it's not addressed in schools. So it's not until you maybe go into employment or come to college or university that you realise that it's not as easy to manage your money as maybe it is to manage, like, your time, for example.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing for students. It might be the first time that they're kind of being financially independent. And we know that studying can have its own financial implications. You know, you might not be able to work full time, you might not be able to work part time due to, like, you know, commitments from the college. So, you know, studying itself can have a lot of financial difficulties and worries.
Definitely. And I think as well, like, when you make the decision to come to college, everything could be financially stable for you, and then something unforeseen could happen. For example, the situation we're all in at the moment with COVID-19.
Yeah.
It's not something that we planned for, and that can be really detrimental to someone's finances. Even if they've got maybe like a wee nest egg of savings put by, it can dwindle away quite fast. So being able to be in control of your finances and knowing where to seek help and advice from is really important.
Yeah, that's something that's you know, it's very useful. And I think, you know, like you mentioned with COVID, people might be in further financial distress. You know, they might have been laid off from work, they might have more difficulty accessing benefits because there's quite a lot of people now that require that, so there's longer waiting times. They might have been receiving less payment from being furloughed, or, you know, there's also that worry of after college, people kind of thinking, what's the economy going to look like after that, and will I be able to get a job?
Definitely. I think the labour market is going to look significantly different, and also for some students, they may be the main income provider in the household, so it can be a lot of added stress for them as well.
Of course. And, you know, when in financial difficulty, students might feel that they have to resort to credit cards or payday loans with really high interest rates.
Yep, I would agree with that. And nowadays, especially in the current climate, payday loans and credit cards, the advertising for them is everywhere. You see it on social media, you hear it on the radio, and you see it on the TV. And I think it almost seems like the answer to your present situation, but in fact it's not. It can make things 10 times worse.
And, you know, on a kind of ethical standpoint, payday loans can target young people or vulnerable people and just make it seem so easy for, you know, if you're in financial worry or stress, to get that money and for everything to be okay. But actually with the high interest rates, you can end up in a kind of more stressful and a worse position.
And I think once you access these things, it's hard to then get away from it. Definitely. Because of the high interest rates, you're never essentially able to pay it back off, and then they've got a grip of you essentially, and that's when things can be quite frightening.
For sure. And I suppose another kind of aspect of the college are the maritime and or international students, and their kind of accommodation costs right now. You know, with COVID, that could be something that they're struggling with.
Definitely.
And I think
I know that. Sorry, Lauren.
That's okay. Being able to discuss that with your accommodation provider or landlord, would you say that's something that's really important?
I would say that is something that's really important, especially for our students who, as you mentioned, are international maritime students. They come over here and they're normally solely funded by their families back home. However, because COVID again it's worldwide, Their parents or guardians may have been laid off or may have issues with their own finances. So we've got students who are over here and they weren't able to return home due to the pandemic, and they could find themselves in a bit of a situation. So with them and with all students, it's really worth their while coming forward, and it's really worth their while coming to have a chat and seeing what their options are before they get themselves caught up in a worse financial situation.
Yeah, so just coming forward and speaking to a student advisor and kind of just understanding that there is help available and there is support available. And you know, I think that financial worries and debt is much more common than people probably think. When I was sort of looking up some information for this discussion that we're having, I was really surprised to find out that the average debt and student debt in Scotland is 14,000 when a student, you know, is finished their studying.
Which is significantly high.
I would say so. And you know, with not maybe feeling like you're alone in this, it can have sort of feelings of feeling under massive amounts of pressure, feeling overwhelmed, shame, guilt, anxiety, embarrassment sometimes, stress, feeling like a failure. And that can lead to depression, suicidal thoughts and self-harm. And I think, you know, while we're talking about the practical implications of financial worries and financial stress, I think it's also really important not to forget about the emotional and, you know, mental health implications of debt. And that can sometimes, you know, take a back seat because, you know, the practical aspects are, okay, we need to kind of support this student to, you know, working out what's best for them to go forward. But also, I don't think we should neglect the emotional impact of that and those kind of thoughts and feelings surrounding that. So I would just want students to know that in the college, there's also, you know, avenues for you to go down to seek counselling support from myself or my colleagues. And you can do that through, you know, accessing an assessment and a self-referral by going on to My City, My Bookings, and, you know, referring yourself for an assessment as well.
I think that's really important, Lauren, is to be mindful of the knock-on effects from getting yourself into financial difficulty. And it's important to acknowledge that and realise that it's normal with that territory.
Yeah, it's, you know, that's a normal emotional reaction to have, and students don't have to go through this alone. There is support out there. So what's the process for students to access support at City of Glasgow College who are having financial difficulties?
So if you find yourself in that situation, the best thing to do is to come forward and have a chat initially with us. So pre-COVID, we would ask you to pop down to student services and just pop in to the drop-in with the student advisors. Obviously things have changed and we're working remotely at the moment. However, we are still here to support them. What we have done is we have made it as accessible as possible. So we've got drop-in services via Zoom at the moment. And those can be accessed with or without your camera, because we know that sometimes sitting on a screen, looking at your own face and trying to discuss something that's really personal to you can be scary, overwhelming, and just not a pleasant experience, to be honest.
I think us at the college kind of find it difficult sometimes to be on Zoom and see yourself. So it's completely understandable that other people would feel that way as well. So having the option of just being able to speak and not have yourself see on camera is actually really important.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like you said, it is an option. It's a choice for them. The main thing is to come forward. So to get the information to access the Zoom meetings, you would just email over to student advisors. So we can provide you with the link for that email address after this short discussion. So if doing a Zoom call, whether it be with or without the camera, doesn't suit you, we can also offer support via email as well. So that might be better for those of you who prefer to put things down in text. A lot of the time to try and gather your thoughts around what's going on for you, it can be easier to write it down. So we are able to support you that way. So once you come forward, as I said, we'll have a chat. We can have a discussion around what funding you've maybe already accessed and what funding you may be entitled to that you haven't yet accessed. We can then discuss different external organisations that may be able to support you further with things like budgeting, managing debt, and getting payments and stuff put in place so that it's not as overwhelming for you.
So there's a lot of options for students. You know, you've spoken to so many students that have faced financial difficulties. It's nothing to be ashamed of. You're there to listen, support, and offer some information and advice and guidance on what their next steps or their options will be like. So, you know, you and your team are very experienced in this, and, you know, it's nothing for students to feel ashamed of.
Exactly. We're not there to judge. We're there to listen and, as you said, offer advice and guidance. And if it's something that we can't help, or maybe we're not specialised in that area, we can point you in the right direction to get that help.
So what external agencies are there for students?
So there's loads of information out there. There's loads of different organisations who really specialise in this. Money Advice Scotland is a really good
Get
one.
that up on the screen right now for some of the email
perfect.
addresses.
So as you can see, there's quite a lot of resources there. We have our internal resources as well. So I touched on accessing funding that you might be eligible for but haven't yet sourced. So that could be things like the Maritime Trust Funds or the College Hardship Funds. So if you follow the links, you will be able to find out more about eligibility criteria, and it's something we're also able to discuss more in depth with you as well. So as I said, Money Advice Scotland, we've got Citizens Advice Bureau, we've got Step and Change, and a few others which are listed there. So these can all be accessed in a variety of ways. So you can call them, you can do a live web chat with them, or drop them an email. So they are very accessible depending on your needs.
I think that's really important, and I think there's a wide range of things available for students as well. Is there anything available for students that maybe are just interested in learning about budgeting or knowing a little bit more about managing their money?
Yes, so Money Advice Scotland do offer a service like that, and it is worthwhile giving them a wee shout. There's loads of information on their website about budgeting as well. So I would say that would be your first point of contact. If you find it quite challenging to go onto a website and not really know where to navigate yourself from because of the raft of information that's there, just pop over to student advisors and we can always go through it with you.
Yeah, I think that's really, really helpful. I think as well from the emotional standpoint of things, I think that if you feel able to, you know, sharing that with someone close to you, friends or family, and talking it through with them can also be super, super helpful. You know, if you're feeling really, really depressed and low and anxious, going to your GP about that and, you know, expressing the emotional aspect of that, or even calling some helplines like the Samaritans and being able to offload and speak about those things. Or, as I said, referring yourself to our service as well is really, really important. So, you know, I just want students to know they don't have to go through this alone. And there is support and guidance out there from people like yourself, Gillian, that are really, really experienced in the practical aspects of financial support, and also from a, you know, a counselling and mental health perspective from the college. You know, we're here to support you as well. So
yeah, because I think, sorry Lauren, I do believe that like your GP and stuff can also give you some advice on where to access help maybe in your local area as well.
Definitely. So I think, you know, just realising that I think it can feel so overwhelming and you can feel really stuck in this and alone and almost like there's nowhere to turn. But actually, you know, once you take that first step and, you know, seeing yourself, you can kind of signpost them to other areas and let them know that, you know, you're not the first person to go through this and you won't be the last, and there is support out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one other wee thing that's probably worth mentioning is that during the pandemic at the moment that we're all kind of facing, a lot of lenders are offering like payment holidays and such, but they're only accessible if you reach out. And again, if that's something that our students maybe don't feel comfortable doing on their own, it's something that they can come to us or even yourself, Lauren, to get some information on how to kind of go about that.
For sure. And I think that's really important as well, because it's not necessarily advertised, but if you access that support, that is available because of the current circumstances. So thank you so much, Gillian, for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys found this information helpful, and you know where we are if you need any further support or information.
Perfect. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks everyone. Take care.
Bye.